I never told my son Marcus about the 17 commercial buildings I own across Houston for 38 years. I let him believe I was just a retired construction foreman who got lucky with a small pension. When he called to invite me to dinner with his fiance's family, successful surgeons who lived in River Oaks, I heard the nervousness in his voice. So, I decided to show up exactly as they expected me to be. But the moment his future mother-in-law handed me an envelope and whispered, "This should help with your rent this month, Harold. We take care of family," I knew exactly what kind of people they were. And when I accidentally mentioned that I owned the medical plaza where her husband performed surgery, well, let's just say the color drained from her face faster than I've ever seen. Before I go any further, let me know where you're listening from today, and have you ever been underestimated by someone who thought they were better than you? My morning started the same way it had for decades. Coffee at 50 odor A.M. black, no sugar. The Houston sunrise painted my kitchen window orange as I sat at my small breakfast table reading yesterday's Chronicle. My apartment in Montrose wasn't fancy. 2 bedrooms, basic furniture, a television I'd bought during the Obama administration. The neighbors probably thought I was just another retiree counting pennies until Social Security hit. What they didn't know was that my accountant had called yesterday with the quarterly numbers. Rental income from my properties had exceeded $892 for the past 3 months alone. 17 buildings, office complexes, medical plazas, retail centers scattered across Houston's most valuable real estate. I'd started with nothing but a construction crew and a dream back in 1979. Now, Mitchell Commercial Holdings was worth more than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. But you'd never know it looking at me. I drove a 2012 Ford F-150 with 180,000 mem on it. My clothes came from Academy Sports. I ate at Whataburger more than any steakhouse. Some people called it eccentric. I called it remembering where I came from. My phone buzzed just as I was rinsing my coffee cup. Marcus, my boy, 34 years old, software engineer at one of those big tech companies downtown. Smart kid, good heart. But somewhere along the way, he'd started caring too much about what other people thought. "Hey, Dad." His voice carried that tone I'd learned to recognize. The one that meant he wanted something but was afraid to ask. "Morning, son. You're up early." "Yeah. I wanted to catch you before work. Well, before your morning walk, I mean." I smiled at that. Marcus still thought I spent my days feeding pigeons in Herman Park. In reality, I had a 900 a.m. meeting with my property managers, but he didn't need to know that. "What's on your mind?" "It's about dinner on Saturday with Vanessa's parents, Vanessa Chen." Marcus had been dating her for 2 years now, and I could tell he was serious. She seemed like a nice girl from what little I'd seen, though our interactions had been brief. Coffee once, a quick lunch another time. She was polite, smiled at the right moments, but there was something guarded in her eyes when she looked at me, like she was calculating my net worth and coming up short. "The surgeons," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Dad, please don't call them that. Dr. Richard Chen is one of the top cardiovascular surgeons in Texas, and Dr. Patricia Chen runs the entire oncology department at Methodist. They're accomplished people. I'm sure they are. They want to meet you properly. Dinner at their house in River Oaks." River Oaks, Houston's most exclusive neighborhood where the old money lived behind iron gates and the new money tried desperately to fit in. I knew it well. I owned 3 buildings within a mile of there. "That sounds nice," I said. "Dad, I need you to understand something." Marcus paused, and I could hear him choosing his words carefully. "The Chens are particular about appearances. They come from a prestigious background, medical dynasty, basically. Patricia's father was a surgeon. Her grandfather, too. They have certain expectations." "What kind of expectations?" "Just dress nicely." "Okay, maybe buy a new shirt. Something that isn't flannel." There it was. My son embarrassed by his old man, worried that I might show up looking like what I appeared to be, a working-class retiree who'd spent his life with hands and dirt under his fingernails. "I'll see what I can do," I said quietly. "Thanks, Dad. I really appreciate it. This dinner means a lot to me, to us." After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, watching the morning light shift across the walls. My late wife Eleanor would have known exactly what to say right now. She'd been gone 5 years, taken too soon by the same disease that Dr. Patricia Chen supposedly specialized in treating. The irony wasn't lost on me. Eleanor had always understood why I kept our wealth private. Money changes how people see you, she used to say, and not always for the better. We'd raised Marcus in a modest home, taught him the value of hard work, made sure he never felt entitled to anything he hadn't earned. Maybe we'd done too good a job. My son had no idea that his father could write a check that would make the Chen family's medical fortune look like pocket change. I spent the next 3 days doing what I do best: research, due diligence. The same skills that had helped me identify undervalued properties for 4 decades now turned toward understanding exactly who these people were. Dr. Richard Chen was indeed impressive on paper. Harvard Medical School fellowship at Johns Hopkins, published researcher with over 100 papers to his name. His practice operated out of the Houston Medical Center, specifically from a building called Parkview Medical Plaza. I pulled up my property records and smiled. Parkview Medical Plaza, Unit 4 on my portfolio spreadsheet. I'd bought it in 2008 during the financial crisis when the previous owner couldn't make his mortgage payments. Dr. Chen's practice had been a tenant ever since, paying $47,000 per month for their surgical suite and office space. He had no idea his landlord was about to have dinner at his table. Dr. Patricia Chen's credentials were equally impressive. MD from Stanford Oncology Fellowship at MD Anderson Department Head by 45. She ran a tight ship by all accounts, though several anonymous reviews on medical forums mentioned her demanding personality and exacting standards. Their home in River Oaks had been purchased 18 years ago for $2.8 million. Current estimated value was around $65 million, impressive for most people. I owned a strip mall in Katy worth more than that. The most interesting discovery came when I dug into their social media. Vanessa's younger brother, Derek Chen, had posted extensively about the family's upcoming celebration dinner to welcome his sister's boyfriend's father. The comment section revealed more than he probably intended. Hope the old guy doesn't embarrass Marcus. One friend had written, "Lol, Vanessa said he lives in some tiny apartment and drives a pickup truck." Derek had replied, "Mom is not happy about it. Your parents are such snobs. Haha, they just have standards." Nothing wrong with that. I screenshot those comments and saved them. Not for any particular reason, just to remember. Saturday arrived with that heavy Houston humidity that made everything feel 10 degrees hotter than it was. I stood in front of my closet, considering my options. I could dress up. I had suits worth more than most people's cars, tailored in Milan during a business trip 3 years ago. I could arrive in my actual vehicle, a Mercedes S-Class that sat in a private garage I rented specifically so my neighbors wouldn't see it. I could show up as Harold Mitchell, real estate developer, and watch their attitudes change in real time. But that wouldn't tell me anything about who they really were. Instead, I reached for the clothes I'd worn on job sites for 30 years. Work pants with paint stains that never quite washed out. A button-down shirt that had seen better days, frayed at the collar. My old steel-toed boots scarred from decades of construction work. These weren't costumes. This was who I'd been before the money came. Who I still was underneath it all. I looked at myself in the mirror. A 63-year-old man with weathered skin and gray hair dressed like he'd just finished a shift. My late wife would have laughed. "You're testing them," she would have said. "Just like you tested every contractor before signing a deal." She was right, but I wanted to see how they treated someone they thought had nothing to offer them. The drive to River Oaks took 40 minutes in Saturday traffic. My old F-150 rumbled past mansions with manicured lawns, past luxury cars that cost more than most Americans made in a year. I'd done work in this neighborhood when I was young, back when I was just another laborer hoping for a paycheck. Now I could buy any house on this street without checking my account balance. The Chen residence sat behind a row-iron gate, all red brick and white columns. Southern elegance meets Asian precision. The circular driveway held a Porsche Cayenne and a Tesla Model S, both gleaming like they'd been washed that morning. I parked my truck on the street, noting how it looked next to their neighbors' Range Rovers and BMWs, like a workhorse that had wandered into a stable of thoroughbred dads. Marcus met me at the gate, his face a mixture of hope and anxiety. He was dressed impeccably in a sport coat and pressed pants. every inch the successful tech executive. His eyes swept over my outfit, and I watched him swallow whatever comment tried to escape. "Dad, you made it. Said I would, you look." He searched for words. "Comfortable. That's the idea." Vanessa appeared behind him, elegant in a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than my truck payment used to be. Her smile was polite but strained, and I noticed how her gaze lingered on my boots, my shirt, the general state of my presentation. "Mr. Mitchell, welcome." She didn't offer a hug or even a handshake, just stepped aside to let me through. "Thank you for having me." The house interior was exactly what I'd expected. High ceilings, modern art on the walls, furniture that looked more decorative than functional. A grand piano sat in the corner of the living room, probably untouched for years. Everything designed to impress, to communicate success and status. "Doctor." Richard Chen rose from a leather armchair as we entered. He was tall, silver-haired, with the confident bearing of a man who saved lives for a living and never let anyone forget it. His handshake was firm but brief, like he was already calculating how quickly he could end this obligation. "Harold, good to finally meet Marcus's father." "Likewise, Dr. Chen. Please call me Richard." The offer felt hollow, the kind of casual permission wealthy people extend to make themselves seem approachable while maintaining every barrier. "Dr." Patricia Chen emerged from what I assumed was the kitchen, though women like her probably didn't cook. She was elegant in the clinical way of someone who'd spent decades projecting authority. Her eyes performed the same assessment Vanessa's had, cataloging my appearance with medical precision. "Mr. Mitchell." No offer of first names from her. "Thank you for joining us." "My pleasure." We settled into the living room, me on a chair that probably cost 5,000 a lozend, trying not to think about the construction dirt that might still be embedded in my workbench. A housekeeper appeared with drinks on a silver tray. The Chens chose wine. Marcus took a craft beer. I asked for water. "Not a drinker," Richard asked, one eyebrow raised. "Never developed a taste for it." "Interesting. I find a good wine essential for unwinding after a long day in surgery. I'm sure your days are more stressful than mine were." Patricia leaned forward slightly. "Marcus mentioned you worked in construction." "That's right. 38 years physical labor. That must have been demanding." "It was honest work, of course." Her tone suggested honest work was something to be tolerated, not respected. "And you're retired now, going on 5 years, living alone," Marcus said. "In Montrose, a small apartment, nothing fancy, but it suits me." Richard nodded slowly. "Cost of living is challenging for retirees these days. Fixed incomes don't stretch as far as they used to." "I manage. Dad's always been independent." Marcus interjected, a hint of defensiveness in his voice. "He's never needed help from anyone." "Independence is admirable," Patricia said, "but families should support each other, especially as we age." I caught the look that passed between her and Richard. They'd already discussed this, already decided who I was and what I needed. The poor father-in-law who would become their charity project, their good deed to balance out lives spent accumulating wealth. "How long have you been practicing medicine?" I asked Richard, steering the conversation away from my supposed deficiencies. 32 years. Started my own surgical practice in 1992. That must have been challenging, building something from nothing. It was long hours, significant debt from medical school, the constant pressure to prove yourself, but we persevered. "Where's your practice located?" "The medical center, Parkview Medical Plaza, state-of-the-art surgical suites, the best equipment money can buy. Parkview, nice building." "You know it. I've driven by." I kept my face neutral. "Good location, lots of parking." Patricia stood. "Dinner should be ready." "Shall we move to the dining room?" The dining room continued the theme of expensive minimalism. A long table that could seat 12 held place settings for 6 crystal glasses, china plates, silver that gleamed under a chandelier. Derek, Vanessa's younger brother, had joined us, greeting me with a smirk he didn't quite bother to hide. "Nice truck outside," he said as we sat down. "Very vintage. Gets me where I need to go." I bet it does. The meal itself was catered, delivered by a service whose name I recognized from my own building's tenant list. Seared salmon, asparagus prepared 3 different ways, a soup I couldn't identify, but assumed cost more per ounce than gasoline. "So, Harold," Richard began, cutting his fish with surgical precision. "What are your plans for the future?" "Taking things day by day. No hobbies. Travel plans. I walk in the mornings, read in the afternoons, simple pleasures. Patricia made a sound that might have been sympathy. It must be difficult. After losing your wife, living alone, limited resources, I'm not unhappy. Of course not. But surely you'd like some comfort in your later years. Security. I have what I need. Dad's always been like this, Marcus said, and I could hear him trying to translate me into something they could understand. He believes in living within his means. A practical philosophy, Richard agreed. Though there's no shame in accepting help when it's offered. Here it comes, I thought. Patricia set down her fork and folded her hands. Harold, Richard, and I have discussed this. We believe family is sacred. When Vanessa and Marcus marry, you become part of our family, too. That's kind of you. We'd like to offer you some support, a monthly stipend to supplement your income. Nothing extravagant, just enough to ease your worries. Say 800. The table went quiet. Marcus stared at his plate. Vanessa pretended to examine her wine glass. Derek watched me with open curiosity, waiting to see how the poor old man would react to their generosity. That's very thoughtful, I said slowly. We just want you to be comfortable, Patricia continued. And frankly, we want Marcus to be able to focus on his future without worrying about your situation. My situation, your living circumstances, your age, the challenges that come with limited retirement savings. Richard nodded. We've seen too many families struggle with elderly care. It strains marriages, creates resentment. Better to address it early. And in return, I asked, just give them space, Patricia said smoothly. Let them build their life together without feeling obligated to check on you constantly. They're young, ambitious. They need room to grow. There it was. The transaction laid bare. That $800 a month for me to stay out of their way to remain the embarrassing relative. They acknowledged at holidays, but otherwise kept at arm's length. I looked at Marcus. My son's face was red, his jaw tight, but he said nothing. Years of good manners and social conditioning kept him silent while his future in-laws offered to pay his father to disappear. I appreciate the offer, I said, but I couldn't accept charity. It's not charity, Richard insisted. It's family investment. An investment in what? In Marcus and Vanessa's future. In their peace of mind. You think I'm a burden to my son. We think you're a father who's done his best with limited resources, Patricia said, her voice taking on that clinical tone. And now it's time to let others help carry the load. The housekeeper returned to clear plates, and I watched her move with the quiet efficiency of someone who'd learned to be invisible in wealthy homes. I'd employed people like her for years. I wondered if she saw through the Chen's performance the same way I did. The thing is, I said, reaching for my water glass, I've been thinking about updating my living situation, maybe finding somewhere bigger. Derek snorted. With what money, Derek? Vanessa, he said. What? I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. The guy drives a truck older than me, and he's talking about upgrading. I do have some savings, I said mildly. From my working years. Patricia smiled the way adults smile at children who claim they're going to be astronauts. Of course you do. But real estate in Houston isn't cheap. Even modest homes in decent neighborhoods start at $300,000. What about River Oaks? I asked. The table went silent. River Oaks. Richard repeated as if I'd suggested moving to the moon. I've always liked this neighborhood. Good trees, quiet streets. Derek actually laughed. Homes here start at $5 million, old man. No offense, but you'd need to work another lifetime or two. Derek, that's enough, Marcus said sharply, finally finding his voice. I'm just being realistic. Mom and Dad worked for decades to afford this place. They went to medical school, built careers, sacrificed everything, and this guy thinks he can just waltz in and be neighbors. Your parents worked hard, I agreed. So did I, doing what? Hammering nails, pouring concrete, among other things. Patricia raised a hand. Ever the moderator, let's not turn this into a competition. Different paths lead to different destinations. There's no shame in Harold's career choices. No shame, Richard agreed, but also no comparison. The medical field requires decades of education, tremendous sacrifice. Construction is noble work, but it doesn't create the same opportunities for wealth accumulation. Usually not, I said. Vanessa had been quiet throughout this exchange, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Mr. Mitchell, I don't mean to be intrusive, but Marcus has never really explained what exactly you did in construction. Were you a carpenter, an electrician? I started as a general laborer. Then I ran crews for a few years, and then I started my own company. Richard's eyebrows rose slightly. Your own company in construction, commercial development, mostly office buildings, medical facilities, retail centers. The temperature in the room seemed to shift. Patricia and Richard exchanged glances. I wasn't aware of that, Patricia said carefully. Marcus never mentioned you were a business owner. I don't talk about it much. How large was this company? Large enough to keep me busy. Derek leaned back in his chair, skepticism written across his face. So you owned a construction company, but you live in a tiny apartment and drive a beat-up truck. Sure, that makes sense. Derek, Patricia warned. No, it's a fair question, I said. The truth is, I prefer simplicity, always have. My wife and I raised Marcus in a modest home because we wanted him to understand that happiness doesn't come from expensive things. A lovely sentiment, Richard said, though his tone suggested he found it more foolish than lovely. But surely you could afford some comfort if your business was successful. Success means different things to different people. Indeed, it does. Patricia finished her wine and signaled the housekeeper for more. But let's be practical, Harold. Even if you had a thriving business in your working years, retirement depletes savings quickly. Medical expenses, unexpected repairs, the general cost of living. $800 monthly could make a real difference for someone in your position. My position, an aging single man on a fixed income. No offense intended, just statistical reality. I nodded slowly as if considering her words. Around me, the trappings of their wealth felt suddenly suffocating. The crystal, the silver, the art on the walls, all designed to communicate superiority. All meant to remind visitors like me that we were guests in a world we couldn't afford to inhabit. Speaking of medical expenses, I said, I've been meaning to see a cardiologist. Routine checkup. Nothing serious. Richard, does your practice take new patients? We're quite selective, but I could make an exception for family. That's kind. Where did you say your office was again? Parkview Medical Plaza near the medical center. Right, nice building. Built in 1985, renovated in 2015. Good bones, solid construction. Richard frowned slightly. You know a lot about it. I know a lot about most commercial buildings in Houston. Is that so? Occupational hazard, I suppose. When you spend 40 years in construction, you notice these things. Patricia set down her wine glass. Harold, I appreciate your interest in architecture, but we're getting off topic about our offer. The 800. Yes, we really do want to help. I reached into my back pocket and pulled out my wallet. The leather was worn, cracked in places, looking exactly like something a poor retiree would carry. I opened it slowly, deliberately. I brought something to show you, I said. A little thank you gift for dinner. Derek smirked. What? A coupon book? I pulled out a business card and slid it across the table to Richard. He picked it up, and I watched his face as he read the words printed there. Mitchell Commercial Holdings. Harold Mitchell, founder and CEO. What is this? He asked, but his voice had changed. Quieter now. Uncertain. My company. Well, one of them. Patricia grabbed the card from her husband's hands. Commercial holdings. What kind of holdings? Real estate mostly. I own about 17 buildings across Houston. Office complexes, medical facilities, retail centers, the usual. The silence that followed was profound. Derek's smirk had frozen on his face. Vanessa had gone pale. Marcus was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before, equal parts shock and what might have been pride. Richard cleared his throat. 17 buildings, give or take. I'd have to check with my accountant to be sure. And Parkview Medical Plaza? Building number 4 on my portfolio. Bought it during the 2008 crisis when the previous owner defaulted. Good investment, actually. The medical tenants are very reliable. Patricia's hand went to her throat. You own the building where Richard practices. I own several buildings where doctors practice, but yes, Parkview is one of them. Nice location. Good parking. Like I said, this is impossible, Derek sputtered. You drive a truck that belongs in a junkyard. You live in some crappy apartment. There's no way you're some kind of real estate mogul. I prefer the term developer, but mogul works too. Dad, Marcus's voice cracked. Why didn't you ever tell me? I looked at my son, this good man I'd raised, who'd spent the evening watching his future in-laws offer his father charity while barely concealing their contempt. Because I wanted you to grow up understanding that a person's worth isn't measured by their bank account. Your grandparents had nothing. They cleaned offices at night and picked crops on weekends, and they were the finest people I ever knew. I wanted you to respect hard work, not wealth. But this whole time you thought I was struggling, that I needed help. I shook my head. Son, my monthly rental income is more than most people make in a year. I could buy this entire neighborhood if I felt like it. I just never saw the point. Richard stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. This is quite a revelation, Harold. I wish you'd been more forthcoming earlier. Would it have changed how you treated me tonight? That's not fair, isn't it? You offered me $800 to stay away from my own son. You assumed I was a burden, a problem to be managed. You looked at my clothes and my truck and decided you knew exactly who I was. Patricia's composure had cracked completely. We were trying to help. We had no idea about your situation. My situation is exactly what it's always been. I'm a man who worked hard, built something from nothing, and chose to live simply because possessions don't interest me. The only difference is now you know about the bank account. Dad. Marcus stood and walked around the table to face me directly. I owe you an apology for what? For asking you to dress differently. For being embarrassed by who I thought you were. For not defending you when they offered you that money. You didn't know. That's not the point. I should have stood up for you regardless. You're my father. You raised me. Worked your whole life to give me opportunities. And I let these people make you feel small because I was worried about appearances. I put my hand on his shoulder. You're a good man, Marcus. Your mother would be proud. She knew about the company, the buildings. She helped me build it. We were partners in everything. Vanessa stepped forward hesitantly. Mr. Mitchell, Harold, I don't know what to say. This is all so unexpected. The question is, does it change anything? What do you mean? Before you knew about the money, what did you think of me? She hesitated, and I could see her calculating her response. But something in her eyes shifted, and when she spoke, it sounded genuine. I thought you were kind, quiet, that you loved Marcus very much. But I also thought you were beneath us. I'm ashamed to admit that. And now I realize we were the ones lacking, not you. Richard had been pacing near the window, his surgical confidence apparently performing emergency surgery on itself. Harold, I think we've gotten off on entirely the wrong foot here. Perhaps we should start over. That depends. On what? On whether you're interested in starting over because you respect me or because you just found out I own your building. The question hung in the air like a scalpel waiting to drop. Patricia stepped forward. We behaved badly tonight, all of us. We made assumptions based on appearances, and we were wrong. I'd like to think we would have eventually seen past our prejudices, but you gave us no chance to prove it. You gave me no chance either. From the moment I walked in, you decided who I was. You're right, and I'm sorry. It was the first genuine thing she'd said all evening. The drive home was quiet. Marcus, riding beside me in the passenger seat of my old F-150. He'd insisted on coming, said he had too many questions for a phone call. The Houston skyline glittered in the distance. All those buildings filled with lives and stories and struggles. How much are you worth, Dad? Really? Enough that I'll never have to worry about money. Neither will you when I'm gone. I don't care about inheritance, I know. That's why you'll get it. He laughed, a sound mixed with disbelief and something lighter. Relief, maybe. What happens now? He asked. That's up to you. Vanessa seems genuinely sorry. Her parents are probably going to spend the next few weeks reconsidering every interaction they've ever had with people they deemed beneath them. Do you think they can change? People can always change. The question is whether they want to. And if they don't, I glanced at my son, this good man who'd spent an evening watching his world rearrange itself. Then you'll have a choice to make about what kind of family you want to marry into. About what kind of man you want to be. I already know what kind of man I want to be. I want to be like you. Even the truck, he laughed again. Maybe not the truck, but the rest of it. The integrity. The refusal to let money define you. We pulled into my apartment complex. Past neighbors who would never guess the quiet old man in 4B was worth more than their entire building. Come up for coffee, I said. I'll tell you everything. The company, the buildings, how your mother and I built it all from a single construction loan in 1979. I'd like that. We sat in my small kitchen until 20 m. Father and son finally sharing the truth that had lived between us for so long. I told him about the early struggles, the near bankruptcies, the risks that kept us awake at night, about his mother's courage when I wanted to quit, her belief in us when no bank would approve a loan. She was the real builder, I said. I just swung the hammers. Marcus wiped his eyes. I wish I'd known. I wish I could have thanked her. She knew, son. She always knew. 2 weeks later, Marcus called with news. Vanessa's parents wanted to have dinner again, this time at a restaurant, neutral ground. Richard had sent a handwritten apology, 3 pages long, detailing his reflections on that evening and his commitment to being better. He also mentioned his lease is up for renewal next year. Marcus said, a hint of amusement in his voice. Said he hopes the negotiations will be fair. I laughed. They always are. I'm not a vindictive man. No, you're just a man who knows how to make a point. The second dinner went differently. No assessments of my clothing, no offers of charity, no subtle implications that I was a problem to be solved. The Chens treated me like an equal, perhaps for the first time since we'd met. Was it genuine change or just the fear of offending their son-in-law's wealthy father? I suppose only time would tell, but I'd seen enough genuine discomfort and sincere apology to believe they were at least trying. Looking back on that evening at their River Oaks mansion, I realized something I've learned countless times in business and in life. People show you who they really are when they think you have nothing to offer them. The Chens had shown me everything I needed to know in those first few hours. But they'd also shown me something else, something more valuable. They'd shown me that my son had absorbed more of my lessons than I'd realized. When the truth came out, Marcus hadn't gloated or used it as leverage. He'd apologized for his own failures and committed to being better. That's the legacy that matters. Not the buildings or the bank accounts, but the values we pass down. The understanding that every person deserves dignity, whether they're signing million-dollar contracts or sweeping floors at night. My father cleaned offices for 40 years. My mother picked vegetables in fields I now own. They would have been mortified by the Chen's behavior that night, but they would have been proud of how I handled it. Some lessons can't be taught with words. Some lessons require experience. The Chens experienced something that evening they'll never forget, and maybe, just maybe, the next time they meet someone who doesn't look like they belong in their world, they'll remember the quiet old man in work clothes who turned out to own their building. That's the real investment. Not $800 a month, but a lifetime of treating people with respect regardless of their circumstances. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, you never know who's sitting across from you. The person you dismiss today might be the one who holds your future in their hands tomorrow. What do you think about tonight's story? Have you ever been underestimated by someone who judged you too quickly? Leave a comment below. I read every single one. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us what really matters in this world. Sometimes the most powerful lessons come from the most unexpected places. God bless you all, and I'll see you in the next